The next 3 pages or so, there are 7 different scenarios. So what I'd ask you to do, could you get into your pairs, please? And then I'll allocate each pair a scenario. And really what I'd like you to do is just to come up with a story of what's going on. And then when you've created your own story, then create your own solution. Say, if I were involved in this story, or I were brought into this story, what could I say or do that would help to move them on to whatever it is that we've decided? So you're inventing the situation, you're inventing the problem, but you're also inventing the process and the solution.
The scenarios exercise. So this is what the delegates were asked to do. They were being shown some photographs, which I shall show you in a moment, and in each case they were asked to think of them as a scenario. In each case there's a photograph of 2 or more people. They cover a range of situations and age groups, and in particular situations both inside and outside work. These are all opportunities where invisible coaching could take place. So for each one, which you'll see in a moment, imagine what might be going on and then give it a title. It doesn't matter what it is, you choose for yourself. And then if you are one of the 2 people shown, what could you do to intervene and help? So this is an opportunity for you to think ahead of opportunities that you might come across later in your general life. So these are the questions to ask. What do you think is going on? If you were involved in this particular scenario, what would you like to achieve? Now, if you do nothing, what will happen then? What could you say? What could you ask if you wanted to intervene? What else could you do that would deliver the desired outcome? And how tempted would you be to suggest a solution? And one of the basics of the invisible coaching approach to coaching is that we do not suggest solutions. We facilitate people to arrive at their own solutions. So this is the first one. I guess it's probably a mother and her child. So think about who they are. I would guess if you're going to participate, you're more likely to take the role of the mother than the child. So what's going on, and what are the questions that you'd like to ask, and what would you like to achieve? Very different age group now, 2 men together, probably in a work environment. What's going on? What do you think is happening in this scenario? Then work through the questions. Another scenario now, and this could be a school teacher and a pupil, or it could be a father and son. It could be anything that you choose. So what's going on? And when you've chosen a scenario, what would be the questions and interventions that might be appropriate? Another one now, much more intimate. But again, it could be a schoolmaster, could be a father helping with his homework. You choose. And when you've chosen, what would you like to achieve? What do you think is going on here? Is it a work environment? An interview environment? What do you think? You choose and then decide what you'd like to achieve. And similar in this situation. And finally, in this little group, what's going on here? What role would you like to take? You could be somebody coming up to the table, or you could be one of those 4. In which case, what would you like to achieve and how would you intervene? So let's go back to the workshop recording and see how our delegates got on.
Okay, so how was your creativity? Did you have fun?
Yeah.
Right. So fun is a great thing to have because it is fun, we like to do it, but also fun is a good context in which to learn. However, the purpose of the scenario was not to enable you to have fun. The purpose of the scenario was to help you explore some of the opportunities. One of the concepts that is taught in NLP is called future pacing. And future pacing, it means the opportunity to go through something, so to speak, in theory, before you face up to it in practice. So, for example, if you're bringing up teenagers and you want to help them to deal with temptation in terms of drugs and all the various things that they come across, rather than giving them some rules or putting them on the spot before they go out or after they come back from a party or something. If you can talk through with them, say, well, what would happen? Can you imagine a state where you're being offered some of this stuff? If so, what would be a useful thing to do? How would you like to respond? Then they can think it through at their own pace in advance. And then if it actually happens later, they've already got pre-programmed the way to respond. Whereas the temptation otherwise is to panic and make a quick decision or to do what everybody else does. So future pacing is a way to prepare yourself for something that might happen. So what we've just been doing is a form of future pacing. It's also an opportunity for you to draw out some lessons actually of the sorts of things that you could do that you can share with the rest of us. So who would like to suggest something that they discovered or something they found useful in these fictitious situations?
When we looked at the scenario, even though we can't hear what's going on or even know what's going on, the body language that we were observing in our particular scenario, which was scenario 2, is so powerful that it leads you to create an image of what that story is actually about, to the point where in that we felt that one was definitely in the mode of show and tell and the other was in the mode of coaching. Just by sort of not speaking or creating a story, but the body, how important the body language is and the impression it's having on others.
Good. So we can draw conclusions from what we see.
Yes.
And you may be right or may be wrong, and in reality you'll be getting feedback.
Yeah.
But it is amazing what we can learn from just, there's no information there, it's just a picture. But even with that we can learn. So can I just take some notes while we do up? A hand up.
Yeah, we went through a process of elimination to decide what would be the most suitable scenario. The son decides or is considering to join the school's football team. And the dad thinks it's a great idea and then asks him a couple of questions of, have you thought about this? Not open-ended questions like, how many times per week will you need to practice? How will the time you spend on the practice impact on your studying and so on? So you could think about, okay, it's great if you're in the football team, and have you already thought about these things as well?
Good. So that was taking a positive situation and talking through some of the consequences and decisions. So what were you actually achieving there? You were achieving two things, I think, weren't you? You were helping to answer those questions, but I would guess you also role modelling the sorts of questions that should be asked. So the coaching was not only in the moment, the coaching was also in the process. Well done, thank you. Can I just repeat? This is the same scenario as the previous one, but whereas the previous one was very much dealing with a happy situation, this was dealing with a more threatening situation in which the boy was planning to blow up the school. But the same process was talking through what the consequences, the pros and cons were. So the purpose clearly, I guess, was to dissuade the boy from blowing up the school, but also to teach the boy to think about consequences and the process. Yeah. This is actually a very interesting scenario, and it's one which requires a great deal of rapport and confidence, I think, isn't it? To talk in a friendly way to a young boy about what is very maybe confusing, but also very, very personal to him, and talk through, and hopefully before the time, the sorts of things that might happen in terms of getting to know girls and so on, and what the consequences might be. And maybe even talking about outrageous results, which I hope they're outrageous in terms of becoming a grandfather too early and so on, such that it becomes a light-hearted, humorous thing, but the message is still there. And the question at the end was, if you were doing this, would you be tempted to tell rather than ask? And you were, but you were able to resist. But what a difference for the son from being talked through like this or told how to behave and told the consequences. Because you know what teenagers do, they resist and they close down. Good, thank you very much. Yes, yes.
It's a very, very basic situation. There's not a lot of, next to no emotional Complexity is an easy solve.
Yes, but also it started nicely and worked up, didn't it? Do you need any help? And then becoming more specific, rather than what have you got wrong, or all sorts of things that tend, I'm afraid, to come out in teaching, but generally. And that could apply in any situation, couldn't it? Do you need any help? Is there any way I can help? What can I do to help? How can I be most useful to you? Good. There we go. So what I've added is, firstly, we could draw a lot of conclusions from the body language. Secondly, it's one thing to coach what the obvious, but if we can get behind it and find out the why, then we'll really start to make some progress. Several of you were really examples of future pacing, taking somebody through a potential reality, a scenario, before it actually happened. And also the one about the young boy and the girlfriends is dealing with what's quite a sensitive issue, but doing it through fun and humour and keeping it very light-hearted, but nonetheless dealing with a sensitive issue.